Well, here we are back doing a computer episode. I couldn't get out to do a walk around today, so we're going to do this.
Drop the weapon. Back away from the bug. Nice and easy.
We're going to talk about notched boards and why we use them and why others probably should use them.
The bullseye on my chest. Destroyed valuable government property.
This little thing right here, this is a bolt placement in slip forms. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4 through bolts, and this is with it on the second lift. This bolt that's on the bottom came from down here when it was the first lift. Same thing. So we raised this up once to get to that, and then we go to the third lift and it's up here. So what this does is it shows us where all the cross bolts go that holds the two forms together. You can't put horizontal rebars where those 3/4 PVC or 1/2-inch PVC is what Texas Filipino uses, and I think we will next time. Anyways, you can't have them at the same place. So what we have to do is set up our stress analysis and decide where we need the most bars. And these are vertical walls of like tanks. So the pressure is actually from the ground side, not the water side, the highest pressure. So these are going to be set closer to the inside face. And cracks in concrete are a lot like ripping paper. If you get it started from the edge, it's easy to rip it. It's kind of hard to rip a piece of paper from the middle of the sheet. So there's a higher concentration of bars, near an edge. We have 3 down at the bottom, which is the highest stress there is, and then there'd be 2 here. This black line, that's the height of the concrete of each pour. 1 height, 2 heights, 3 heights. So near the top edge we have 2 bars, and then we just have a couple spaced in there. And when you move it up, you have to end up with 2 bars near the bottom, 2 bars closely spaced near the top, and a few in the center. But the whole purpose of this, all this scribble all over the page, is to find out where they cannot be. They can't be where the through bolts go through and holds the forms together. And that's all we get out of this, is a placement for the horizontal bars. Now, we'll get to the real topic of this thing here. I promise we'll get there. Rarely promise. Okay. This is what we call notched boards. We have a board here. This is the 3 rods that were close together near the bottom. And it's not on the screen.
I'll notify Rosalita to put away her cattle. Bert's out.
That's unfortunate. Let me see. I wonder if the whole thing's been off the screen.
The sanctity of Perfection Valley is being violated. Our rights are being trampled by whoever is inflicting these shriekers on the valley.
Okay. On the left is the 3 notches near the bottom, and then we have the closer together notches at the top. And the trick is when you pick this board up after the first 4 feet, the top bar of the previous lift is where this notch will fit. And we call them notch boards because they're just boards with notches.
But you really did bring shriekers into our valley.
And this is a way to really quickly get your grid of rebar set up, have them all the same. You don't have any gaps of spaces where you need a bar, but they were, some were too close or some were too wide. It puts a really uniform pattern. Normally, near the bottom, I put a rebar 2.5 inches, and I go about another 4 or 5, and then about 7, and then we're going to go about 10 inches to the next bar up until we get near the top edge, and then we get a double bar near the top edge. So these are going to be laying out the horizontal bars. We also have the vertical bar notch board.
Done. out of range. Caught up road this afternoon. Should be fairly mellow.
Okay. It has a little piece of the wood hanging here. It does absolutely nothing.
But as I was saying, we're not some renegade.
It keeps the material from breaking out near the end.
In fact, they're funding.
And this is a 16-foot board. We can get 18-foot boards here, but for this, a 16 is a plenty.
Where'd they come from?
Now we're going to show you what this thing does.
Lucky chance.
We're going to keep this a short video if I keep moving.
Just as it was about to get
Okay.
The resulting shriekers were rearranged to purchase them for study.
Well, let's go back a little bit.
Come on, these are shriekers. It's just this. We're training them to use their heat.
This is showing you two purple boards, and those are going to be set about
Sounds weird, but my
9.5 feet apart. If your grids are small, like 7 by 7 or 7 by 8, it's uncomfortable to walk on, and you get your feet cut up or stuck. Then we'll put a couple of blocks of wood under those purple boards, raise them up about 3 inches or 4 inches, and that way you can get your toes under the next one without ever touching anything. But the thing is, we're going to take, like in this case, we're going to cut bars in half. They'll be just around 10 feet, maybe 3 inches shorter than 10 feet. And they lay in the notches in the purple board. They'll be on the top of it the way it's sitting right now. And what they do is they perfectly space your boards. You're going down the wall. These are going to be the vertical bars. This end here would be against the concrete. And after you drop a bar into all the notches until you get to the length of your wall, or you go as far as your board goes, and then you pick the boards up and slide them down. But you're trying to make, in this case, 16 feet of wall. And there's not a whole lot of walls in this house that went to 24 feet. But we did have another couple purple boards that went on out there, another 10 or 12 feet. So we didn't have to move them. We just kept laying them up. Okay, once you get those bars, now you have to put the ones that are going to go horizontal. Now there's 3 of these blue boards shown. There's actually only one. The first board butts up against the purple board down here at the end. Okay, now we're going to get a little closer so we can see what's going on. Maybe. And sneaking up on it again. There we go. Okay. There's this is made for number 12 bars, but we might use 10. I think we're probably going to use 10, especially on the dirty kitchen walls. Some of these pours, the only thing the rebar really does is if we get a crack in the wall, it keeps the pieces from moving around. Some floors that are on grade, it's pretty much the same thing. You put the bars, 3 rebars diameters off the dirt, so it doesn't crack from the bottom up. But they mostly just keep the pieces from walking around or getting one above the other one, something to trip over. Because you don't really need it for structure. There's houses built where there's no rebars in the floor that's on grade. Anyway, you got these 10-foot pieces laying here. They go just past the notch board, maybe 2 inches or something like that. We want to get these notch boards as out of the way as we can. So now we take and you'll have a bunch of parallel lines here of rebars. You take the ones that are going to be crossed it, the horizontal bars, and you throw them up on top of the ones that are sitting in notches. Then what we do is we take this first notch, get hold of the first board and shove it over till this hits that, and then just walk along with your foot and shove them back and forth so they pop up into the notches in the blue board. So they're restrained left to right and up to down. And you go right along and you tie wire everything that's in it got a notch near it. And that'll take you up to the height of the first 4-foot lift. If you're laying out bars for 10 foot 132nds, what we had for our wall height, then we would go down until we got to the last notch here, get them all tied off, then pick the blue boards up and scoot them down till this one that was over next to the purple board is now hanging over top of this this next one here. And the board is sitting up on top of the bars you're going to put in the notches. Doesn't make any difference because as you go down just rattle them around with your feet. They pop up into these things and it just sort of swings down into place. But you do that 3 times. You know, you're doing once, then you're moving it twice. On our house walls, they were more than, the bars were like 12 and a half or 13 feet. And we used up all the rest of it for this, that, and everything. Wasn't any waste. When you get to 10 feet or close to 10 feet, you can slide these down the rods. Just get hold of the board near the middle and jerk on it. It'll slide right out of the rods. Get it out here near where the end of the actual height of the wall will be. We laid out all the rebar for all the vertical walls on the living floor of the house over 2 days. It seems like a lot of time to spend as fast as this sets up. And we did a day of prep work before we started. We had Florence put down with a paint roller about a half-meter wide stripe of Coach Saver white latex. And then she went down there and put down the lengths of the different wall sections. We had the inner atrium wall length, the outer wall that you see when you look into the house, and then a spoke length. Actually, there's only 3, because all those things have the same length all the way around the house. It's a real repetitive build. Part of that was cost savings, and part of it just to be different. My wife brought me like a McDonald's bag with this scribble on the back and says, "Can you build a house like that?" You know, it was, oh sure. What is it? You know? Anyway, Dodung went along, and we had a wide felt tip pin straight line down the first Coach Saver white paint, and that's what they measure from. And he goes over and he measures top and bottom of the door jambs or the center of the window. And then the top of the doors were round, so there was a nail tied in a string, and then half the width of the door from that was a loop in the string. So you put the nail in the middle and swing the string around, and it was chalk in that hole, just white gray school chalk. And then we had a guy, his whole job was to cut like 9 rebars for the first part of the jamb, and he was cutting that while people were laying the other bars in. They were carrying up the vertical bars and setting them in the notches while he was cutting the horizontals. And once you get up to the top of the door, we'd have him just throw the full length bars in near the top so they'd have something to tie on. And then he'd go back and cut the ones that were like 3 of them were all different lengths where they went over the round part of the door. And then he'd go down the other side and go to the next door or next window, whatever it was. The window was a distance from the first felt point pin mark, you know, and a distance up from the floor, from the base. That number's the same on every window in the place. Otherwise, you couldn't put furniture underneath of them. So he would swing a circle for the big circular windows, and he would draw 2 lines and a half round top on them. And we did, let's see, 10, 20, 30. I can think of 30 real quick that were done mostly the first day, and then we worked on the second day. They were stacked and made, actually, they were made and stacked in the reverse order that we wanted to pour the walls. So when it got time to set up a room, you know, a whole wedge of the building, you just took them right off the top of the stack. And that let us drive the cement mixer around inside the house. And when we get done, it was only one time it wasn't on the concrete floor when we ran it. So it was a whole lot easier to deal with that way. Well, we're still cleaning up the mess on the floor, but every once in a while we knock some off.
Any other survivors?
Just little dabs here and dabs there. Anyway, that's what notched boards do. They let you place a whole lot of rebar at particular heights off the floor for your horizontals and evenly spaced on the verticals. And of course, we reuse that lumber for other stuff. It's all experienced lumber at our site. There's no. Well, once in a while there's some new lumber. We've got some right now, but the experienced lumber gets notches on the opposite side. Like that purple board, it's 3 inches wide, and the notches are like 3/4 of an inch deep. So we can put another set of notches on the other side without it falling in too. Some of them we use on other things with cocoa lumber. If we were gonna, like, we use those notch boards for putting the stirrups on beams, mostly beams. We have another trick we use for the columns. It's a couple pieces of plywood that are match drilled with the holes where the vertical bars go, and as one of them goes on the end to locate it, and the other one goes down near the base. And the base has the bars bent with 290s, one to get out to away from the column, and then a little end bent down. It's the leg it sits on. There's a little bit of from 3 to up to 13 inches of concrete in the bottoms underneath of the footer pads. It's reinforced, but the whole idea of that was to use a transit and get the base that we're going to build the house on as close as we get to all the same level on 20 columns. And I don't like to backfill dirt and try to compact it and then worry about how much bearing there is on it compared to some other place. You're using different dirt, and it will never be compacted as well as the ground that's been sitting there for 100 years. So we poured concrete, minimum of 3 inches on the interior column. Most of them were 7 to 13. It just waterproofs the bottom of the hole because by the time we got around to actually building stuff, we were closing in on rainy season, the first season. Anyway, when you're doing the columns, there's a rectangular square pad of bars, which you see in all the videos of people building houses. That's leaning back against this half a sheet of plywood that all the vertical bars go through. And once we get some of it started, we just lean that over into the base of the tall vertical bars with the 2 bends in, and just stick all that together and just tie wire everything. And as we go up, we slide one of the match drilled templates on down. All the stirrups are down there near the bottom, and that first one starts about 4 or 5 stirrups higher than the last one down. That gives you room to throw them all up in there, because as you come back down you slide that towards the end. It doesn't really slide. You get a 2 before and you beat it down the other end. We shouldn't have used such a tight fit on the rebars. The holes are only 1/8 of an inch bigger than the rebar. They could have been 1/2 inch bigger. It would work just fine. Well, maybe not a half. But a 1/4 wouldn't have hurt. Because they all lay in the bottom of the holes. It's not like they're going to have a 1/4 inch out of place. So every one will lay right in the middle of the bottom of the holes. So the first one we were able to pick it up with 6 guys and struggle down over to where it went. We put a piece of 4x4 lumber across the hole, about 1/3 of the way across the hole. So when we set it down, the holes are 6 feet deep for the footers. And we had a lot of the weight working for us. So we picked up the end that was going to go to the top and just sort of walked down it, lifting it as we went, and flopped it into the hole. And the column rebars are so big. The columns are like 28 by 32 or maybe a little bigger. So they don't lean too much one side or the other like they would if they were like a 7 by 16 or something, like a lot of block houses might have.
All right, let's go. This ought to register on there.
And the notch boards. We use the plywood plates on that, but we use the notch boards on the beams. If you take a couple sawhorses and you put all the rebars that are going to be near the top or whatever, you just lay them across the sawhorses. You put the notch boards down on either side. Then you slide the stirrups on from one end about three at a time. Every other one of them reversed 180 degrees, so the 135-degree bends on the ends don't match up. And when you put them in those notches, the top will be exactly spaced. They'll be square with the column. We double space the first three on either end, because of higher load concentrations. And as after we get the top done, those the rebars that are the top of the cage can lay on the sawhorses. So we pull the notch boards out and we shove them in the inside of the stirrups, let them turn them with the notches down, and that locates the bottom of the stirrups, and we tie all them up. So the notch boards work for big grids on walls with windows and doors openings, and they work for floors. When we did the floors, they were like 7-inch spacing, like on the suspended slab between the living area and the fan housing, which looks like a second floor. And they were an inch bigger than that, maybe two. Maybe were like 9 by 9. No, they were 8.5 by 9 on the first floor. But the longest notch board we had when we did that was 8 feet, and some of them were pieces that we broke the end off or whatever. And they just got a good start on it, made a streak across the middle. And then they just, one guy would pick it up and the other guy would slide the board. So he didn't have to pick up much of the grid. And all the rebar, like on the floor, is continuous. It's not bunches of pores interrupted by walls. It starts at one end and goes to the other end, right across the building. So there's basically no weak points in it. And then there's plenty of steel in it. This way we do things here, I guess. Anyway, that's notched boards. And you can use the lumber later on for other things. You only have to notch it about 3/8 of an inch deep. We notch it deeper because when we drop what's blue in this thing over it, we don't want them to rock back and forth and fall on their sides. So it seems to get be more stable when we make them deeper, because there's more of the wood that's down past rebar and less of it above it to try to turn it over. And plus, when you make these things, however many you're going to make, you stack all the wood side by side and either put a screw in there through each one. As you add one, you put a screw, or you use the big green clamps that open up to a foot, and you put the notches across all of them at the same time. You mark one and then use a square and mark all of them. Same thing with the purple ones. If you're only doing two, you still put them side by side. And then when you cut them, you cut the two outside lines, and depending on the width of them, at least one saw cut between the lines. It's going to be where the notch is. So then you can put a screwdriver down in that center notch and wiggle it left to right, and all the wood falls out. Sometimes you have a little piece of one, a little like a corner down there, and you put the screwdriver between the part you're keeping on the outside and that, and it'll pop off. Sometimes we take a wood chisel and wipe it across there with the flat side down and really clean them up. But it doesn't have any effect on how well it works or how easy it is to use it. It just looks better. And some people just have that little bit more pride in what they do. So if they want to make it pretty, it doesn't take any time. Let them do it. So that's how we do rebar with poured concrete. That's how we'll be doing the rebar on the dirty kitchen, septic tank, cistern, and fish pond that are coming up. Anything that's got a regular spacing on the bars. Okay, so that's all I want to talk about on this video. I know it's not much of a subject, but try it. You'll like it. It works on floors. Everybody does floors. Okay. If you learned anything, you can give us a thumbs up. If you just can't understand why I'd even bother doing this, go ahead and give me a thumbs down. I don't care. We're not monetary. We're an information channel, not a monetary channel. There's a subscribe block. I use those. I don't use the notification bell thing because I check the channels I'm interested in. As long as they're putting out videos at least once a month, I got a list and I go down the list. it puts a different colored number on the how many what they've made since you last checked into the channel. And I'll just play catch up. Okay, y'all have a real nice day, and we're going to do another one here probably in the morning. Oh golly! Oh, it's going to be how to figure how much materials for a concrete pour. Like, it's really a bummer to get 75 or 80% into a pouring a floor or a wall and not have enough Portland cement or not enough sand to mix with your gravel, and you're scrounging everything you can to throw in there. And in some cases, you really just can't do that. You got to have the actual material. So we're going to do one on that. I should be able to make it shorter than this one. Oh, well, but hey, I get a brownie point because I didn't wander off the topic on this, except for the columns with the plywood plates. But that's related. It's not really completely foreign to the idea. Okay, bye for now. I forgot to show something on this video, so I'm going to stick it on the end. This is the dimensions for the notch board for the forms that we left dimensions for. The dimensions here on the top of the notch board is for the notches themselves, beginning and ending, all measured from the end. The dimensions at the bottom down here are the dimensions to the center of the notch. They're also the dimensions that would be on the end cap for the forms, so you can have like half a meter rebar sticking out, and that just keeps them all level at the same height as the rest of the rebars. So the bottom is the center of the notch, and the top is the beginning and end of the notch, all measured from the bottom. Okay, have a nice day.